Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Pride Roundtable. Welcome to my living room. This is our new normal that we're working in, but it means so much that you have joined us tonight. So thank you again so much. My thoughts and prayers are with everyone as we continue to fight against COVID-19. I know that that has had such an impact on each and every one of us in different ways. So it means so much to me, especially as we go through this time, that you've been able to join us as we talk about issues that affect our community. It's important that we discuss these issues. So I'm so thankful that everyone has taken time to join us tonight. Please stay inside and continue to follow the governor's recommendations because we know as we continue to bend that curve, we are closer and closer to having the opportunity to get out and enjoy our new normal. But I do have some questions that are prepared tonight. Tonight, we're going to be joined by several leaders of our local LGBTQAI community. So we're just excited to jump on in. But it's important to me that I connect with each and every one of you to hear your concerns as we move forward. I would like this conversation to be interactive. So if you have questions, go ahead and feel free to submit those in the comment box below. And also take time to look at our website, clintbryant.com. And for our Spanish-speaking folks, go to es.clintbryant.com to view our website in Spanish. But I am so grateful to have a very dynamic panel that is joining us tonight. We have Christine Mall. She is from Saginaw, and she is an activist and wears many hats in our community. So thank you, Christine, for spending time with us tonight as we tackle some issues that have held our LGBTQAI community back. So we're going to break those barriers tonight, and just thank you so much for your work and your advocacy within the community and also within the Democratic Party. So thank you so much, Christine, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here. So thank you, Clint.
Yes, absolutely. And then we have my good friend Denzel McCampbell from Detroit. He as well wears several hats. He's involved in Detroit politics and all things Detroit. When I met Denzel in our MPLP class with Michigan State, he was just effervescent, I think is probably the best word to describe him. He has an excellent personality, and he's a phenomenal leader within the city of Detroit. And he's an activist for the LGBTQAI community as well. But we're just so pleased to have him join us tonight. So thank you so much, Denzel, for spending time. I know you have a lot of titles that we could have put in there, but we'll go with activist for now.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Clint.
Absolutely. And then we have our good friend Scott Ellis from Bay City, Michigan, joining us. And he is the executive director of Perceptions Michigan. Scott, as well, is involved in the community in several areas. But I'm so pleased to have him join us tonight. We were speaking earlier about some of the things on our agenda tonight. So I know he's excited to get ready and rocking and rolling as we move forward. So thank you so much, Scott, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Clint. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive in to some of our agenda tonight. One of the things that I wanted to discuss, and something that's really close to my heart, is the 2020 census. As we continue to navigate through COVID-19, we know that a lot of our federal resources are based on some of the numbers and the population that we receive. So I've had several of these conversations, and one thing that I always like to do is to discuss the census. And I wanted to know from each of you, have you been counted? And from your perspective and based on your priorities, why is it so important for our constituency to complete the census? We can start with Scott.
Well, I'm proud to say I have been counted. I think it's really important. I actually worked as a census collector 10 years ago during our last census in 2010. So very happy to be able to participate again now. And it's important for everyone to be counted, regardless of background or LGBT status, anything like that. And I have to applaud our regional effort here that was coordinated by our local community foundations.
Yes.
That really have driven that and pushed our Great Lakes Bay region to be counted because it is so important.
Mm-hmm. Chris, let's go to Christine.
Yeah, so I can say mostly from the work that I do with the State House and helping the state reps organize town halls based around the census. We know how important it is. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Clint, but I think it's $1,800 per person is the amount of aid that is available when people fill out the census. So, I mean, that might seem kind of small, but if you think about it large scale, for every person that doesn't fill out the census, that's the amount of money that our community loses in assistance. So it's definitely really important to do the census, and it's already hard for people for multiple reasons. There's the fear of filling out the census, especially, in communities that are marginalized. What will happen to me if I fill this out? Where will this information go? So it's already hard. And then now to add on top of it with COVID-19, shutting down some of the avenues that we have as far as, census collectors going door to door. I think it's more important now than ever that community leaders like state reps, state senators, local community leaders are getting out there and talking to people about the census and how important it is to the community.
Absolutely. Let's go to Denzel.
Yep, for sure. I have been counting, and I agree what's already been said about the census. I mean, the $1,800 per person for community resources. We talk about representation to make sure that folks. I know Michigan is in danger of losing the congressional seat, but even when it comes down to the to redistricting and how our representation will look in government is important, and I think also the census can be used as a tool to ensure that the information that we want to be captured is actually captured on the census. I know there's been a lot of push for a question to be included on for LGBTQ folks identifiers. We also see that with when it comes to race for folks in with a Middle Eastern background. Currently, there's not a question on the census for folks to be able to check that. So I think also it's important for folks to be mindful and to push for the census to be all inclusive. Of course, it comes around every 10 years, but I think looking at the 2020 census is important to get counted. It doesn't take a long time to do. And you folks probably have seen something in the mail, but you can also go online. Even if you don't have that code, still go online and fill it out. But also looking forward to the 2030 census to ensure that that's also inclusive as well.
Absolutely. And then just to piggyback on that, Denzel and Scott, in 2010, Michigan was the only state out of each of our 50 states. Michigan was the only state to lose population. And we all have also lost representation in Congress, as Denzel mentioned. So we want to make sure that that does not happen again. I know locally, we're seeing decent numbers within Saginaw County, but we need to continue. There are still some pockets and more difficult to reach population. So we're going to be relying on our neighborhood associations and groups within our community to make those connections connections, because it's pivotal, especially at a time like this as we're going through the global pandemic, that we get all the resources that we need, and everyone receives the health care, and we break barriers and eliminate disparities as much as possible. And the best thing that we can do right now is to fill out that census to make sure that our communities are not underfunded. I want to shift a little bit to education. One of my top priorities is education and providing resources and protecting our students. I want to make sure that our students feel safe in their schools. Do you think that we are doing enough to protect our LGBTQAI plus students? And do you think that we're doing enough to protect young people from abuse and discrimination? I'll go ahead and start with Denzel.
You know, I think about when it comes to education, I think about for myself. Going through school, I mean, I came out when I was in high school, and I think my experience, thankfully, has been better than a lot of folks that we hear about, and a lot of folks that we know have had very negative experiences in school. I definitely think we can be doing more to protect young people from abuse and discrimination. I think it really starts to we need to have strong protections in school and in our education laws. And I also think we have to ensure that we are doing that work from the very beginning. I mean, even if we're talking about catering learning, and to if you think about pre-K and kindergarten, to have that education that talks about the differences in people and embracing that as well. Like, I think that goes a bit far, like it goes far to have a curriculum that embraces the diversity of folks. But yes, I do think there is more to be done with protecting folks in education. I mean, there's just been we need leaders that can be strong in pushing for what's right. I think that what we've seen when it comes to laws protecting trans kids, like we saw a lot of community leaders step up and say we're going to do the right thing, but we also saw a lot of folks be silent. And I think when it comes to electoral activity, we need to be asking those critical questions of the folks who are asking for our votes, to say, are you going to stand up for everyone, no matter who they are, and speak for what's right, and especially vulnerable communities such as LGBTQ folks.
Mm-hmm. Christine.
Yeah, for me, I think it's not just about being safe. It's also about visibility, right? So when I think back to when I'm a lesbian. When I think back to when I was in school and I was in the closet, a big issue for me was there was no visible role models for me, right? So we learned about certain people in history who may have been gay, but it was not ever told to us that was a gay person that I was learning about. So it left me with the feeling that, I was alone. No one who's like me has ever done anything of consequence, anything worth mentioning. And that's really hard, especially, I'm a pretty ambitious person. So for someone, I was looking for a role model, someone who was like me. And I was not seeing that reflected in my schooling. I wasn't seeing that reflected in my family, in my community. It's pretty lonely. So I think it's really important that we include LGBT people in the curriculum in schools.
And that's why I'm glad you're here, because you are ambitious, Christine. You are one of the most active people I know. And that's why I'm so thankful that you took time out. But you're a great example for folks in our community to look up to. So just thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that was great. Scott.
I have so many feelings on this. Growing up in a very small town, and
Where'd you grow up, Scott?
I grew up in Atlanta, Michigan.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Northeastern Michigan. And, like Christine said, a lack of role models and even the vocabulary in schools to understand who who you may be, and that was something that I didn't even fully know at the time. I didn't come out until college, when you learn so much more, that there are so many other options, and you really discover who you are. And like Denzel said, I think that not only is it starting early, but it's also starting the education process at the highest levels. So it's a district-wide issue that needs to be started at the district level, not in an individual school. And I recall a conversation that I had a month or so ago with a local superintendent, when I asked them, what's the status of GSAs and stuff in your schools right now? And he didn't know. And not in a malicious way, in a very sincere, I want to know, but I don't. And so that says to me that the whole setup of GSAs in high schools here in our region, and even down to some middle schools, it's very fragmented. So it all depends on what school you happen to be in, whether or not you're going to have access to something like that. So, from my perspective and from our organization's work, we would be looking at having those conversations at the district level, especially with our superintendents, and trying to get something a little more regulated or just even across the board. And I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Now, Scott, are there any resources specifically targeted towards our youth that you might recommend?
There are. We have some really great partnerships here in the region. Our organization lists resources on our website, and there's a project underway to really expand that. We offer a support group that meets here in Bay City. Everybody's welcome. Meets twice per month, and it's really focused on our transgender community. We have relationships with Family and Children's Services over in Midland, who offer, they're called Compass groups. They're for both youth and adults, for all LGBTQIA. And they're a great program. We're also in the process of launching a new collaborative effort with Centerlink, which is a national organization of LGBT community centers and organizations. And it's an online chat-based support system. So there are multiple different groups that meet throughout the month, and they're facilitated by professionals that work with LGBT centers across the country. And it's a free service for youth ages 13 to 19. So we're in the process of finalizing that and getting it up on our website to be able to offer it. So there are resources out there, and we're happy to connect as many folks as we can.
Absolutely. Scott, give us your website at Perceptions.
Perceptionsmi.org. And you can visit our resources there. And like I said, we're constantly expanding that. So
great.
And if you need any help or anything, you can find my contact info on there and send a message.
Awesome. Thank you. I have this question for Christine, because this is a field in which she works every day, as she mentioned. But my question is, how can state legislators best support the LGBTQAI community?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we used to have in Michigan, we do have a Democratic governor now. But if you look at our state house and our state Senate, we still have a Republican majority in both. And up until 2018, the Republicans had a supermajority, right? So the Democrats, almost like it almost didn't even matter if they showed up, right? Because the Republicans had enough votes to really pass what they wanted without them. So I think it's important for state legislatures to be active and vocal in supporting the community. So every year, every legislative session, I know that one of the Democrats at least will introduce legislation to expand Elliott Larson And really besides that, you don't really see a lot of activity. I think it's more important that when a bill comes to light that may affect the LGBTQ community, I think it's important that state reps take a stand to, even if it's just a floor speech, make sure that they are vocal about expressing their opposition to that. Also, I think, when they're doing town halls, coffee hours, other community events, I think there should be more roundtables that are focused on, just like this, Clint, on our community.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I have just a quick follow-up question. I'm going to ask that question to both of our panelists as well. And I want to encourage those who are watching. I know we're on YouTube, but also on our Zoom. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment box below. We'll make sure we get to them. We may not get to all of the questions tonight, but we're committed to making sure we're responding and connecting our listeners to those resources. And thank you, Scott, earlier for mentioning some of those. But the other question that I had, Christine, is do you think that a state legislator should commit to using inclusive and gender neutral language in communications?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to be honest. I saw that on the list of questions. And it was that's actually something I really haven't put much thought into, which is kind of, I guess bad for me not to think about that really. But definitely, I think not just state legislatures, there's no reason for all of us not to, right? As humans, the language that we use is important. We're very social creatures, right? And we learn throughout time, there's multiple words and ways that we express ourselves that we learn. This is not good. This affects a certain group of people. And it's so easy just to change the way we speak. I never understand when there's resistance against something like that, right? But definitely, I 100% think that that's something that should be consciously focused on.
Thank you. Let's go to Denzel. Denzel, let me go ahead and repeat the question for you. How do you think that state legislators and legislators in general can best support the LGBTQI community?
I think I agree with what Christine said. And I think it's language is important, and the language shows that like you're actually there to represent all of your constituents, right, in your community. I Of course, with legislation, of course, with showing up, it's like you showing up to events, but just showing up to your constituents that are showing up with them, actually asking questions. A lot of folks say, well, I didn't know about that, or I don't understand, then ask questions of your community, like to come forward to understand all of your constituents. Because for me, it's like we're getting to a point, I think we've been at a point where it's like I'm if you're going to say you didn't know, then that's not enough for me. Is you need to, if you want to represent me, I need you to go the extra mile to understanding all your constituents and being willing to represent all your constituents. I don't know, I don't care if it's a R behind your name, a D behind your name, or any other political affiliation. I need to see that you are willing to go to bat for me as your constituent, and that's, for me, that's what I would look for in the state legislature or folks on all levels of government.
And how do you feel about so let me just get back to the portion of our question about using inclusive and gender neutral pronouns. You think that needs to happen?
Yeah, I it's like I'm not just saying this. When Christine said that about seeing the question and not thinking about it, I think it's also like in the spaces that I'm in. It's like we talk about pronouns and we ask pronouns from the start all the time, right? And then when I go into spaces that are not used to asking pronouns, you it's it's something that needs to happen. It's something that should happen, and it's something that should be a norm across communities, right? It should be, because you don't know, and you're making assumptions, and again, that's about, you should be willing to ask questions. You should be willing to learn from folks, and for me, that's one aspect of seeing folks for who they are, is asking what their pronouns are and using the pronouns that they would like to be used.
That's right. Let's go to Scott.
I can't add much more to what Christina and Denzel said,
Mhm.
other than I think we use gender neutral pronouns more often than we think. And and those who may kind of balk at doing that, they do that also. You know, we do it even subconsciously, referring to a group of friends, they or them, or and so it's not too much to ask. It's really a bare minimum. We can do this to respect people in our community, and so that's what I think on that.
Oh, thank you, Scott. I see we have a comment from Andrea, who's joining us live, and she says the more pronouns are normalized by leaders, the more commonplace it becomes. I think you're absolutely right, and we just make that commitment. It's a part of our everyday life. And I think it's important that our leaders do that as well. I do want to talk a little bit, Scott. I'm going to start with you on this question. It's about the expansion of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. So let's discuss that a little bit. We're seeing some movement on expanding those protections, but then COVID hit us. And social distancing took kind of control of all of our lives into a somewhat of a new normal. But I know that the process has gone digital, which is great. But what else is there that we can do, and how can we get that message across?
We have to continue sharing information about the importance of adding your support to that, to the petition, because of all the things going on in the world, and to be in the midst of a signature gathering campaign in which we need a huge amount of signatures, 340,000, and to then get hit with social distancing and all of that really did put a damper on it. But to Fair and Equal Michigan's credit, they really jumped right into action to offer another way of adding your signature and showing your support there. So we have to continue, and we do this weekly in our announcements we send out. We include a link to the website and encourage folks to go on there and sign it. And so I hope that we see a big increase in the number of signatures that were gathered previously in person because of this new way of doing it, and that it is accessible to more people, especially in our rural parts of the state. The signature drive was really focused on southern Michigan. So, and we had a presence here in the Great Lakes Bay region, but now we can really expand it to the whole state, and we'll need that support in order to reach the signatures required.
Good. Denzel, what can we do? What else can we do to get the importance of this ballot measure out there? I mean, I think we can share on social media and having conversations, but I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit of how we can really highlight this issue.
Yeah, I think even taking to like how we're gathering today, right? We're gathering via Zoom, and folks are watching us on YouTube, and we have our networks of folks, even if it's just our family, like even putting together virtual house parties, right? To talk about the importance of expanding LA Larson Act, and the steps on how easy it is to do that digital signature, right? To that in this chat here, we can just share the petition and folks can go ahead and sign it digitally. I think in the ways, thinking about the ways that we have been forced to connect now, and virtually, and how we're connecting with family, how we're saying, we've seen so many like birthday parties that are virtual, how many like graduation connect with folks in that way, like using that to expand our advocacy on what we need to do for our community in that way. Like I agree that the ballot committee has, and Fair Equal Michigan has really jumped on that, and I think there are ways that we can think about how we're socializing now to really expand that. If it goes a long way if everyone is saying, okay, I'm going to get 5 of my family members to collect to sign this digitally, and then those 5 will get 5 more, and it really, that number, that large number that appears to be large, becomes much more manageable in helping out with that effort.
Absolutely, thank you. Christine, you have been an organizer for years, for a really long time. Are there any tips that we can employ? Of course, Denzel and Scott both mentioned some good tips. Is there anything else that you might be able to add to that when it comes to organizing and collecting those signatures for this really important ballot measure?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the important things in organizing is personal stories, right? So I think a lot of people don't even realize that you can be fired for being gay in the state of Michigan. You can be denied housing for being gay in the state of Michigan. I think a lot of people aren't aware of that, and they aren't aware that that's what this is about, expanding Elliott Larson. So I think if as for people like me or people that are in the community, if we can share our personal stories about times when we've maybe experienced that or felt fear for that. Like I can remember back when I was working in restaurants, it was right around Christmas when I had just gotten a job at a particular restaurant, and we were going to have
You can tell me offline.
it's kind of like a company party, right? And so my new boss asked me I could bring a +1, and I did sign up to bring a +1. And she said, "Are you bringing your boyfriend?" Right? And so I'm bringing my girlfriend, right? But like that was scary for me. I had only worked there for like a month and a half. I don't know if she's going to be okay with this, and she just asked me outright, "Are you bringing your boyfriend?" I had to say, no, I'm bringing my girlfriend, and then had to feel nervous about it for, a day or two. Like,
What's the reaction going to be? Or is there going to be any reprisal?
I think people don't understand, number one, how real that fear is. But people also don't understand how often we talk about our loved ones or our partner in just our day-to-day conversation at work. People say, "Oh, it's behind closed doors, keep it behind closed doors." It's not. We're all, you can't there's no conversation you can't go a work day without someone bringing up, their significant other. It's just natural human conversation. So I think the more we talk about it, the more we talk about personal experience and personal stories, the more people will realize those things. And I think it'll make it a lot easier to win over hearts and minds.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you, Christine. That was beautiful. One thing I do want to talk, well, let me shift gears a little bit, talk about healthcare. I don't think that our healthcare system will be correct as a county until we understand the importance of mental health. We know that members of the LGBTQAI community are more likely to suffer from anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress. And I want to use this time to share any resources that you guys would recommend for any of our listeners. And then I want to discuss your thoughts on ways that we can expand opportunity and resources to vital mental health services. I know some of the previous issues that some of our citizens may be challenged with are compounded with this COVID-19 virus. So I wanted to go to Denzel, and then we'll go to Christine, and then we'll wrap up with Scott. But let me go ahead and repeat that question just a little bit. We're going to talk about mental health. And we know that members of the LGBTQAI community are more likely to suffer from anxiety, depression, or post-traumatic stress. but are there any resources that you would recommend to our listeners? And just discuss your thoughts on ways to expand opportunity and resources. Let's start with Denzel.
Yep. So I know what I'll touch on the second part because I want folks who are listening to really hear about folks in the Saginaw area because the resources that I have are in the Detroit area. But I what I'll say is this is that mental health is something so another thing that I do I Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is communication director and even in what we see on the federal level we don't see a lot of attention paid to mental health, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community. And I think first and foremost we need to ensure that funding is going to mental health services, especially for those who are underinsured and uninsured. And we also know across the state that the public mental health system has been decimated when it goes back to the Engler administration. So I think when speaking about legislators and lawmakers, I think there needs to be a keen awareness to be paid attention to funding for public mental health and also specialized services. And I think it goes back to the conversation that we were having around education and acceptance and also what our curriculum looks like and visibility, right? I know the Michigan chapter National Association of Social Workers. I've been to their convention annually, and they have specific discussions around mental health and services with with the LGBTQ community. So I think those are things that need to happen more to have more service provider that actually are experienced, are accepting, and are really open to providing the best mental health service for LGBTQ folks because it's a needed area that I think widely is not paid attention to or given much funding and attention, but especially for accepting folks for LGBTQ who are LGBTQ.
And thank you for that shout out to our social workers. They really often work a thankless job, and they deal with a lot of mental health and a lot of stress themselves. I want to also, let me ask, let's go to Christine and then we'll go to Scott as we talk about mental health and post-traumatic stress and anxiety. So Christine, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it's unique, a unique situation for our community because you have to be worried that the counselor or social worker that you're working with, they may have personal issues. They may be, homophobic, and that's a huge worry. I know when I was younger, I was always worried that, if I go see a counselor, they might try to make me straight, put me in some sort of conversion therapy, which was not helpful at the time. So I think that adds another layer. And as far as I know, and I've looked, I don't really think there's any resources out there. You can see that a counselor it might say that they are experienced with LGBTQ issues, but that's really not enough. I think to allow people to really take that jump and set up an appointment. I know that Michigan was recently awarded a federal grant for $2 million. And it's going to 5 different communities for mental health related to substance abuse, and then also just general mental health related to COVID-19. And I know that Saginaw is one of those 5 communities that did receive that grant. So that's good to know that money is coming into our community and is going to be used to train and hire people. The last thing I'll say on it is, with the way things are, right? We're normally we would be having this meeting in person at a round table, but we're doing it online, right? So a lot of counseling sessions are being done online or over the phone. I think that's a good thing that will come, maybe some silver lining that will come from the situation that we are in right now. is that that will be more normalized. And I think that will make it a lot easier for more people to seek help, especially with mental health issues. It's a huge, if you're already struggling, it's a huge burden, I think, to have to drive to an office somewhere, go into a strange building, maybe see other people in there. Being able to do it online or over the phone, I think really is going to change things, and hopefully a lot more people will be able to seek help.
Absolutely, Christine, especially when access is so limited for mental health services and even, I mean, all health services. We're seeing in the rural community such a lack of access to care. And in the urban centers like us who live in Saginaw, Denzel, and Detroit, getting to those services, catching a bus, or, there's just barriers that we need to eliminate so everyone can have access to those services. And I think you're absolutely spot on. Let's go to Scott as we talk about mental health and anxiety and, trauma.
Yeah, right now, the LGBT community already faced a higher risk of social isolation, and this is only exacerbated by the social distancing that we find ourselves in, and it's only compounding onto that anxiety, the depression. We definitely have a concern about folks who may be staying safe at home, but in an unsafe environment at home. Mm-hmm. That's definitely a concern. So I want to highlight something Christine said, because she really was spot on with identifying counselors that really have a specialization in working with the LGBT community, and how that is very lacking in the Great Lakes Bay region. I know I can tell you that off the top of my head, I know maybe two actually have that additional training and certifications in some cases to work with the LGBT community. So there's a real difference between a mental health agency that says they're welcoming and affirming, but having a counselor who truly has that experience working with mm-hmm. that, something that we know from we're in essence a referral organization. People come to Perceptions and are looking for resources, and we direct them to resources. And we know that there's a lack of places to direct folks in that area. So again, another reason why we're continuing to expand and grow that resource directory, and that great points that maybe need to be highlighted as we do that. It's what certifications and trainings do these individuals have that really make them qualified to work with the community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. I just wanted to, we have a good friend of mine, Bill, who's on, and he just wanted to say thank you to Christine. And what you were talking about earlier is why him and his partner waited so long to marry, and that reprisal from an employer. That's just, it's wow. That's really difficult to work through. I want to ask our panelists right now, what are two tangible things? We will start with Christine. What are two tangible things that should be the top priority when it comes to ensuring that we protect our friends and family within the community?
Yeah, first I would say visibility, right? So going back to making sure that we're including LGBTQ people in curriculums in schools, and just visibility, making sure that there's role models out there, that even if you go to what Scott was saying about training, special training for counselors, making sure that it's not just a couple blurbs, a couple words in their bio, that it's like, there's some actual training that took place, and it is visible there for people when they're looking for mental health providers, doctors, things like that. So I think visibility, and then, it takes very minimal effort, I think, to make real steps to take change, right? So I think ensuring that we put protocols into place that require people to be educated on the issues that the LGBTQ community faces. So I would say visibility and education. Really, I think everything pretty much comes down to that. So.
Let's go to Scott. Two tangible things.
Definitely continue pushing forward with the Elliott Larson expansion. I think having those protections at the statewide level are a real solid foundation for us to kind of use as a pinnacle of, we have these protections now at statewide level, and they're protecting basic things like employment and housing. I mean, just essentials. So I think we all face this, even in the different communities that we live in our region. Some places may have a non-discrimination policy, others may not. And people don't always understand the extent of it. The non-discrimination policy here, I'll say in Bay City, where I live, is focused on contractors and people that the city work directly with. It's not a blanket non-discrimination policy that protects an individual who's going into a shop downtown and is denied service. It's not the same type of protection. So, having that statewide in law, I think would do a lot and is so essential right now. And then, like Christine said, just being visible and engaging with the community. I think that's really important. We see it with some and not with others. So continue doing that. I think it's a win-win.
Good. Excellent. Denzel.
I echo everything that's been said. And I would say, I think one thing is to realize that every issue is an LGBTQ issue, right? And think about, because there's so often that we'll say, okay, I'm gonna think about these issues separately from everything else. And for example, if we think about poverty, right? Like poverty hits LGBTQ folks hard, disproportionately more than other communities. We talked about healthcare, and we talked about education. So if we look at all of these issue areas and how the LGBTQ community is impacted, is really when we're thinking about those policy areas to really take an extra step to say how are vulnerable communities really impacted, and that we can't just have blanket policy to say, oh, that will solve every issue. That we have to dig deeper to say, how does this actually uplift and help specific communities? And I think that's one aspect. The other aspect is to make sure we're not tokenizing the community, and actually listening to folks and taking it and actually uplifting and elevating folks. And two, whether it's leadership positions, whether it's elected roles and things, right? Like, it's so often that you will see LGBTQ folks say, oh, I had this conversation, I'm going to check off that box. No, it's actually bringing folks at the table, having them at the table and actually listening and actually incorporating what they have to say as well. So I think that's too, and that shows up in every aspect, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in government, and in our personal lives as well.
Thank you so much for that. Let me see if we can get Councilman Ostash on. Let's go ahead and try to see if we can get him on. I'm going to ask my team if they can patch him through if he's listening. Let's see. Bill, can you join us on live?
You should be able to hear me.
Oh, good. It's good to see you. I miss you so much. I love everyone on our panel. I don't want anyone to think, but it's good to see you.
I know you had your panel tonight, but I told you that I would join in and listen, and if I can chime anything for you, it'd be great. So
I love you. Are you in the kitchen?
I am in the kitchen.
I love it. And
My husband is up on the third floor getting ready for the next.
you have to give a plug for your home.
Yeah, it's my refrigerator.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But thank you so much for joining us on live. Really enjoyed our conversation. It's been beautiful. But Bill, is there anything that you would like to add? I know we've talked about this quite a bit. It's just, I mean, it's commonplace for us. We talk about everything from what we're streaming to what we're listening to. But I know there were some comments that you had put in our chat section below, but I just want to give you an opportunity to share that with us tonight. We do have, this is Councilman Ostash with the City of Saginaw. We had the pleasure of serving together on the City Council. And Bill is an activist for historic preservation, for LGBTQAI, and so many different roles that he has within our community. But I just wanted to offer you a few moments to offer some words of encouragement and to share some of your story, especially with you and Kevin. So go ahead.
There were so many times that I could have interjected in your everybody has just really brought up a lot of great points. There were so many times I was sitting here just wanting to chat or say, hey, bring me in, bring me in. First of all, I want to thank Scott. I just recently joined the board of directors for Perceptions, and Scott is our director. He's doing a fantastic job. And you heard Scott talk about a lot of the issues that we're working on, and they are so important. And it's everything from Scott that talked about, and Denzel and Christine. You look at, Christine, you touched on this. You touch on the coming out part, right? So I grew up in a Roman Catholic Polish family in the south end of Bay City. And there was a lot of that family tradition. So you were to go to school, get a job, have a family. I mean, that's how you were being programmed. And to come out at that time was extremely scary. So I came out late in life, which is okay. I think everything has a time and a place for everything. And I think that's where, once I did come out, and my mom, bless her heart, I remember the day I came out, scared to death, right? You know, and so I'm talking to her, and there was a story I was telling. She starts to cry because there was some other things going on in my life. And I said, no, Mom, I'm gay. And she says, oh, is that it? So when you have that, never, I guess you just got to get over the fear and just go for it. You have, you know, you can't worry about the other side. But that's why I'm such an advocate for it, because I don't want other kids growing up, or kids in their 20s, or somebody's in their 30s, to make those same mistakes, right? Just put your feet on the ground, know who you are, and then try to walk forward with that. We talked about the marriage piece. So marriage equality had already been in place for 5 years. And then when I ran for city council, of course, I was in between the lines, different news articles. I was running as an openly gay candidate, but that wasn't my platform. That wasn't why I ran for city council. And you know that. My is just the passion for the city, trying to move it forward. But when that happened, I kind of turned around to Kevin. It was right after the election. And I said, there's always been this fear, right, from your job. So I said, there's no fear now. I says, everybody knows we've been together for 15 years. And that's when I finally decided to propose. And then we went back to Provincetown and got married, where we committed back in 2004. So there's just a little story about that there, and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if you have something, please just stop me, because I will continue to tell stories. I guess another important story that happened not too long ago, a cousin reached out to me, and I had another cousin was just kind of having some feelings. I kind of feel like, well, sometimes I may like women, or sometimes I may like men. And I said, well, let's talk about Dr. Kinsey. Okay, because the Kinsey studies. And so Dr. Kinsey, there's a whole movie on this, you can watch it. He developed a scale. And so he watched the video, did some stuff, took the test, came back and talked to me, and he says, well, cousin Billy says, I'm kind of falling in the middle. And I said, and that's okay. You have to remember that whatever it is, that's okay. There is bisexual, there is transgender, there is, very gay on the scale. So I guess my point there is I've actually been able to help out people in the family. and just they'll send to me because his mom's first expression was, she said, this is totally out of my realm of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the things that we've talked about tonight, and especially with perceptions, what an organization in the resource page where you can just go and try and find help or talk to somebody. There's all those resources there. And that's why I'm so excited to be a part of this group. Scott knows I've been around perceptions for 15, 16, 17 years. So I know the history. So to watch them progress to the organization that they are now and doing the work that they're doing, when they asked me to join their board, I wanted to have the meeting, but I already knew in my mind what the answer was. So yeah, super excited to be a part of that group too. So
Wonderful.
if anybody has any questions for me, go ahead.
Well, let me give you, I'm gonna toss that last question that we spoke a little bit about. Give me two tangible things that should be the top priority when it comes to protecting the LGBTQAI community. What are two tangible things that we can do? I think you might have hit on one of them, which is sharing your experience and being a good listener. But what is something else that we could possibly do tangibly right now?
Gosh. I think one of the things I would like to see happen, because I think it would really send a message, is that we could get the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act passed and changed. Because there are so many companies that are on board for this. And I mean, even if you look at the last administration, we talked about that we had a Republican governor in the House and the Senate too. But even at that time too, even Governor Snyder was saying, let's kind of see if we can get this out of committee and get it through. And that never happened. So I applaud. I know Scott's done a lot of work with trying to gather the signatures, and we've been getting out there. But I truly think if we can get it on the ballot, the voters of Michigan will most likely put it through. And I think that's something that we can do there too, even within our local communities. And one of the things we've talked about is like local legislation. And people know that Saginaw tried to pass an equality ordinance here in the city, and we didn't do that. But even though we didn't, we still have protection under our housing ordinances.
Just a quick plug, before both of our time.
Yes, before both of our time, it actually does spell it right out, and that you cannot be discriminated against housing for your sexual orientation. So we're 50% there as a city. So
close, but hopefully in November we will take that lead. But thank you, Bill. Thank you so much, and just give you a big air hug now. Yes, thank you for joining us. We always do this. It's me and Bill. But thank you. I just want to say thank you, Bill, for joining us, Councilman Ostash, and thank you to Scott Ellis, Executive Director for Perceptions Michigan. Thank you. Christine Mall, our LGBTQAI activist, Democratic Party activist here in Saginaw County, and also to my good friend Denzel McCampbell out of Detroit, Michigan. I love that background you have there, Denzel. But again, I just want to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in tonight for our conversation. I know there are many other things that you could be doing right now, but you took the time to join us, and I am so grateful. It's been a great experience on this call, just learning from each and every one of you. Please know that I hear you, and I want you to stay tuned as I work to elevate each and every one of these issues that we have discussed tonight. I want to invite you all to join me tomorrow on Facebook Live at 9 p.m. We're doing something really special for our 2020 graduates. So go ahead and send us those photos. You can send them to me at clint@clintbryant.com. We've worked up something really special just to recognize our graduates. We know that this has been a difficult time for them, not being able to participate in some of the more normal activities that they were looking forward to as it relates to their senior year. But I also want to let you know, for more information about me and about my policy agenda, you can go to clintbryant.com. But also for our Spanish-speaking folks, you can go to es.clintbryant.com, or you can text Clint to 22999. There you can connect with me and find more details about our policy agenda, or yard signs, events, and find some important updates, and especially if you are interested in volunteering. And remember to connect with me using the social media handle at Clint Bryant MI. Good night, everyone, and continue to stay safe. And again, thanks so much to our dynamic group of panelists. And I hope to see you guys real soon. All right, take care. Stay safe.